Okay, so in the field, you're not really going to do your scene size up in a one-step, two-step format because you'll almost be doing it subconsciously as information becomes available to you. For example, when you arrive on the scene, you can see what it looks like. You have a much better idea of what it is than when you're on the truck driving to the scene. And you can tell maybe this is a seedy part of town, or maybe this is a nice middle-class neighborhood. But even if it is a nice middle-class neighborhood, that leads me into scene safety, which is, first and foremost, extremely important. Because if you become incapacitated or injured and you're doing your job, you can't do that job. What you're there for, you can't do. You cannot render patient care, and you then become another patient, so you're straining your EMS resources. You have to also watch out for scene hazards, such as, we live in West Virginia, we have a blizzard season. So, snow and ice, that's a biggie, because it's slippery. And there's not really much you can do to mitigate that, per se. So you just kind of have to be mindful that it's there and take extra caution. Or hazardous material spills, such as on a highway. It's always better to err on the side of caution when you're deciding, should I get someone specialized to do this for me? Because always better to be safe than sorry. My main concern whenever I'm going to work is making sure I go home after I go to work. This next part, I feel like it honestly should be considered scene safety, body substance isolation. I wear gloves with everyone. I was talking to someone and he disagreed. He says that you need the sense of touch like that to be able to build trust with your patient. And yeah, you should have a nice rapport with your patient, but not at the risk of catching something nasty, you know? Because we work with nasty people. So everyone, gloves and glasses. Everyone. No exceptions. But there's a lot of other PPE on that ambulance. Use it as the situation dictates. Like, if you're doing some OBGYN or maybe massive hemorrhage, maybe you need a gown. Or if you're dealing with a cough and sneezing patient that just looks like a living biohazard, maybe you'll need a mask or maybe you'll need a respirator. For the love of God, wash your hands. Most of the time you should be using disposable resuscitation equipment because it's just the standard of care now. I'm young. I wasn't here when that wasn't the standard of care. I've never seen a multi-use bag valve mask, but that's the standard now. You also need to differentiate and decide on your method of injury or your nature of illness. This is really important because it can give you some clues as to what's actually wrong with the patient, and it can allow you to begin formulating your treatment plan. For example, in a vehicle versus pedestrian traffic incident, you're going to expect lower extremity injuries or fractures, maybe femur fractures, etc. Or in a car versus car, if the patient was smart enough to wear their seatbelt and you can see bruising from the properly applied seatbelt, you can have a high index of suspicion that there's going to be some internal injuries there. Or if the cab of the car has intrusion, that could be very, very bad. Nature of illness. Normally, the best person to get nature of illness information from will be the patient, unless they are in some way incapacitated. Then you got to kind of get crafty. You can get information from bystanders or the environment. The environment, we deal with a lot of overdoses in the state. If you're at a scene, someone's unconscious, not breathing much, real slow breaths, snoring respirations, and they're surrounded by drug paraphernalia, what are you going to think it is? Just right off. Could be an overdose. Or maybe patient has a history of strokes. Had a patient yesterday, 3 or 4 strokes. Family knows that. They're presenting a lot like a stroke Could be a stroke. And you should be able to do this as the situation dictates. This should be a fluid thing. You shouldn't really have to try. It should be second nature.